Okay.
We're recording.
We're recording.
And welcome back to Butter With That, a movie podcast recording remotely in Philadelphia. We are still in the midst of the coronavirus quarantine. And so we are still bringing you your regular Butter With That content, but this time digitally on the internet by recording via Zoom. How's everybody doing today? Getting some head nods.
Yeah. Connor, do you remember, and not just Connor, but everybody, when we were joking about coronavirus, we were like, yeah, it's fine. I want to slap my past self.
I know.
Oh, we'll have 2 weeks off. It'll be great. Not 21 days later.
We were so stupid and young back then.
It's not even 21 days later. I mean, like, knowing that we're not going to go back to work until the end of May.
I don't know if I've matured or completely regressed in this time period as well. Maybe a little bit of both, depending on the insight.
I have definitely, I feel like, lost a good amount of weight from just not snacking at work constantly.
Oh, well, isn't that nice for you?
So you might have caught us last week. We were sort of doing a Zoom test, talking about some quarantine movie recommendations. Thanks to folks who messaged us or commented on our Instagram post, giving us some recommendations. And since the Zoom test seemed to work out pretty well, we're going to roll into our next month's theme, which is, if you're watching the YouTube video, quote unquote, Miss the Boat theme. But before we roll into the first movie we're going to be discussing for this new theme, I just wanted to read out a little email from friend of the show, Sarah. Y'all know.
Yeah.
Ooh, it's been a while since we've gotten an email. We got it last night. It's the first time I haven't cried myself to sleep in ages because it's been so long since we've gotten an email. So I'm just going to read it out. Hey, Butter Crew. Hope you're doing well and staying safe. I'm really happy that you found a way to keep recording episodes. It brings a sense of normalcy to my week in this weird time. I highly agree with Christine's choice of comfort movie. Pride and Prejudice from 2005 is my favorite movie of all time. I absolutely adore it. But I'm starting to watch the 1995 version. So maybe I will soon have a more balanced view of Pride and Prejudice adaptations. As for other comfort movies and shows to watch, I recommend Our Souls at Night, America's National Parks, and Twin Peaks. I haven't seen any of those. Have you guys watched Twin Peaks at all? I know we know a few people that love Twin Peaks.
I thought she was going to say twins.
Also twins.
But yeah.
A nice twin combination. Twins and Twin Peaks.
And
The 30th year anniversary of Twin Peaks, or is about to be. So,
30?
Yeah, I think so. Which is pretty crazy.
Sarah wraps up her email by saying, a question for you all. What movie or show would you recommend avoiding for the quarantine? Looking forward to the next episode, Sarah. I thought that was a pretty interesting question. So if anybody had any ideas, feel free to, things that you didn't really want to recommend, things to stay away from.
It's hard to say because there's so much time to kill. It's like, why not watch anything? But
I want to say a movie around family and friends. Like, you know how we had Family and Food and Family last year? I would not be watching while you're sleeping because I miss my family a lot. So nothing quite like that.
I feel like one that popped to my mind was Contagion, but Christine, you were bringing up before we were recording. Is that actually a good movie to watch for an appropriate take on kind of what was going on? Or maybe like 28 Days Later, any other kind of like viral outbreak sort of film?
Yeah, I watched Contagion 2 weeks ago because of pressure from friends. But then I found it quite interesting and quite disturbing, but I think in a more fascinating way. So I would say if you haven't seen it, it's an interesting watch.
I think I saw that. Another different Sarah had a movie party for that in our freshman year of college in our dorm room. So I've only seen that once, and it was a long time ago. Maybe a revisit. I know on Letterboxd, you guys might have seen this, that it's been trending for weeks and weeks now. Movies that people have been watching. Anybody else got some not recs to see during the quarantine?
I think I was kind of thinking of just like stuff that's like inherently stressful. Like I was actually thinking about Uncut Gems, which we'll probably talk a little bit about later. But like in general, like Safdie Brothers stuff is very like high energy and high stress. And I feel like for me that would probably be too much right now. But I also like watching horror movies and stuff. And I know like some people would be like, oh, I don't know, that'll stress me out. But it's like, you know, I guess we all have like our things that kind of help with that, but yeah, I can't imagine watching like Uncut Gems right now. That might actually kill me.
My friend watched that the other day and said he really loved it, but that it was so incredibly stressful. So I'm kind of on the fence. I want to see that.
Yeah.
But it might put things in perspective. You know, if you watch an extremely stressful movie where the main characters go through terrible ordeals, you're like, well, at least right now that's not me.
Cool. Well, thank you so much for that email, Sarah. Definitely, folks who are listening or watching this YouTube video, feel free to send emails to butterwiththatpodcast@gmail.com. We would love to read them out on the show. Awesome. So let's dive into our first movie. So I feel like we have a whole kind of, back and forth about like what different themes we want to do as we go, as we've been doing this podcast. And Miss the Boat, I feel like for me personally, has been one that's kind of been creeping up over the past couple of months. And I'm really glad that we get to pick this theme. It's a little unclear maybe at first, but I sort of think of a Miss the Boat movie as basically a film, maybe a director, an actor, a genre, or a franchise that you never really got into maybe as a kid or when that movie or whatever was popular. So picks from all of us for this theme are going to be movies that, or franchises or directors or actors that we were sort of, missed that. Didn't really watch that when it was popular. And for me, my pick for this week is Spirited Away, the 2001 in Japan, 2002 in the US, anime classic by Studio Ghibli, and directed and written and drawn by Hayao Miyazaki out of Japan. And so I made this pick because anime is not really something that I've been into for a lot of my life. There's some big exceptions, Dragon Ball, Dragon Ball Z. I've had 2 big Yu-Gi-Oh phases in my life. And then a few of us watched Neon Genesis Evangelion. And maybe Tori will start watching that eventually soon. And so outside of that, my experience with anime is pretty shallow. Dave, I saw you had your hand up.
Oh, no, sorry. I was just going to report on that. I just watched up to the most recent rebuild movies for Evangelion. And if you've heard me my impassioned endorsement before of the series, stick to the canon series, I'd say. I'll get into that at another time. But yeah, those are not so great.
That's a shame.
Yeah.
And so while I have seen a good amount of like pretty popular anime television, outside of like the Dragon Ball movies and like a Yu-Gi-Oh movie and the Pokemon movies, in terms of feature-length Japanese animation, it's a pretty big gap in my cinematic knowledge. And so as we were sort of coming up with movies that we haven't really seen before or don't really know too much about, Spirited Away came to my mind instantly. And I also have a pretty funny kind of anecdote about watching this movie, but we can get to that in a few minutes. Kind of before we dive on in, so everyone has seen it now, but what's sort of everyone's relationship like with Spirited Away? Or just Studio Ghibli films in general. Christine, do you want to go first?
Sure. Spirited Away is a beloved movie by me. I love this movie. I had a really good friend growing up who was really into Miyazaki movies and introduced Spirited Away, Howl's Moving Castle, Kiki's Delivery Service into my life. And I think Spirited Away is the movie I've seen the most times. But I think from world building to visuals to the score to the characters, it's just like a universe that is just sumptuous, I feel like is the best way to describe it. So it's so wonderful to watch it again and just share thoughts about a movie that I really love.
Awesome. Who else has seen this movie before, watching it for the podcast?
I have.
And what was it sort of like kind of revisiting it? Were you sort of kind of tapping into the same feelings of when you first saw it?
Yeah, so I mean, it's a movie that like all the Studio Ghibli movies that I've seen are knockouts. Miyazaki and his team are, I don't know, I would say that their output rivals anything that Disney has done, even at their best. Um, so as far as animation goes, as far as storytelling goes, they're generally like really spellbinding. I had seen this one a few times before, but I usually try to kind of space it out. Um, it's one that I don't return to very often because although although I could imagine it's hard for the sheen of this kind of movie to wear off over time, I do kind of like to give it some distance so that every time I'm just like wowed. And this was no exception to watching it again.
Awesome. And Sam and Tori, was this your first time watching it?
I think I've seen like part of it when I was a kid, or like I know like iconic images or scenes or something, but like when I was watching it now, there's a lot of imagery in it that definitely would have scared me when I was a kid, because I was kind of a scaredy cat with like stuff like that. And it like does have a lot of like stressful stuff at the very beginning too. So like this probably wouldn't have been that appealing for me at that time if I did try to watch it, because I would have just been scared. But I am excited you picked this because specifically Studio Ghibli stuff is kind of like a miss the boat for me. Like I didn't see many of those growing up. So like it was kind of cool because I like felt like I also got to like do 2 of the miss the boats this month, because I was like, oh shit, yeah, this is like also an area that I'm not too familiar with. But I loved it, so I'm like very excited to talk about it.
Nice. And Sam, your thoughts as a first-time viewer?
Yeah, I really enjoyed it. I have seen Kiki's Delivery Service before, so I'm a little bit familiar with the genre, and I loved that movie. I really wish I would have seen this as a kid because I definitely would have been 100% about it, especially in 2002. I was like a weird 11-year-old, so like, yeah, right where I needed to be. I think I would have loved it.
I think you
Oh, go ahead, Christine.
I think, Tori, you bring up a really good point. And Sam, as far as like what is the right age to like first have seen this movie? And I feel like, because yeah, I didn't watch any of these movies until high school. And I think like Tori, I would have been terrified as a child, like seeing a lot of that imagery. And was like, I would love to talk to like an 8-year-old who's watching this and get their like in the moment thoughts about the movie.
It's funny that you guys are bringing up that because I actually saw this movie for the first time when I was that summer going into 3rd grade when this movie came out. But before I dive into that story, I just want to give a brief plot synopsis for folks who haven't seen it. In this animated feature by noted Japanese director Hayao Miyazaki, 10-year-old Chihiro and her parents stumble upon a seemingly abandoned amusement park. After her mother and father are turned into giant pigs, Chihiro meets the mysterious Haku, who explains that the park is a resort for supernatural beings who need a break from their time spent in the earthly realm, and that she must work there to free herself and her parents. The scene where the parents turn into the pigs, that was one little 9, I believe I was 8 or 9 at the time, that I just could not handle. So I was going into 3rd grade in 2002, and it was my friend's birthday. He was super into anime. I believe he still is. And so after his birthday party that morning, that afternoon, we went to the AMC in Deptford, New Jersey. All of us, there were probably about 15, 20 of us to go see this movie. And I was just not ready. Growing up, I had a huge fear of being lost, of being on my own, like a lot of people, of losing my parents. And so that scene in the beginning when her dad's like, it's fine, we're going to go into this, well, let's go look into this place. And then her parents turn to pigs, she loses her parents and has to fend for herself. I had a really difficult time back in the day of kind of getting over that hump. And so I only really remember the first maybe third of this movie. So sort of the rest of it as I was watching it last night again was sort of like a whole new movie, even though I saw this movie such a long time ago. And I think sometimes we've talked about movies that have scared us as kids, or movies that maybe we weren't ready for. And so this definitely was sort of one for me. But looking back now, it's like, oh, this really isn't too bad. I just kind of got myself all worked up. Dave, did you have a hand up?
Yeah, just one thing that it did bring to mind was like, I remember watching Pinocchio as a kid. and Disney's Pinocchio, and it getting to the kind of iconic scene on the island where those sort of like more like riotous children are like turning into donkeys, and it's like this really horrific moment. So it's kind of takes that sort of framework and ratchets it up to 11 because it's like a young girl and it's her parents. So it's really a pretty as you mentioned, a pretty intense scene within the first like, I don't know, quarter of the movie.
And the movie doesn't really let up in terms of the problems and issues that it throws at Chihiro, who's then later known as Sen, which we'll definitely get into as we go through the movie. But I just wanted to talk very quickly just sort of about the production of the movie, box office, kind of stuff like that. So this movie was a passion project for Miyazaki. He already released tons of movies before this with Studio Ghibli. And he wanted to make a movie for 10-year-old girls, basically. Apparently, in kind of interviews I was reading, him and his family would go off into like the mountains every summer, and his friends would bring their children, and so he would watch these family events with all these 10-year-olds and young kids running around, and was like, wow, they don't really have any sort of. I would love to create a movie for this group that is where a strong young heroine who is not just about wanting to fall in love or all these kind of schmaltzy themes, but one who is really confronted with pretty adult problems. And this movie began production in 2000. And was released in Japan in July of 2001 with a budget of $19 million. One thing I wanted to look up, because I know Tangled was supposed to cost a lot of money, and this is not adjusted for inflation, but Tangled cost approximately $260 million to produce. When Spirited Away, like I said, unadjusted for inflation, but Spirited Away cost about $19 million US. And I would say I like Tangled for what it is, but I think Spirited Away is far superior movie. And still to this day, it is the box office champ in Japan. It dethroned Titanic when it came out as the highest grossing movie in Japan, and it still holds that record to this day. And it was also the first movie ever to make $200 million before opening in the United States.
Whoa.
So I really had no idea how much of an international sensation this movie was back in the day. Currently on Rotten Tomatoes, it has a 97% for critics, 96% for fans. I feel like a lot of the time we talk about movies where that ratio skews one way or the other, and it's opposite, where fans love it and critics hate it, or vice versa. And Rotten Tomatoes described the critical consensus as Spirited Away is a dazzling, enchanting, and gorgeously drawn fairy tale that will leave viewers a little more curious and fascinated by the world around them. And that resonates with me. To kind of cap off all of its success, it won Best Animated Feature at the 2003 Oscars, and was the first and so far only Japanese anime film to do so. So kind of sort of in a league of its own. And this movie is just wild. I knew that Studio Ghibli had really gorgeous films, but I never really understood just how beautiful and just how thematically rich a lot of these movies are. This movie was, how many themes Miyazaki crammed into it, such as like transitioning from childhood to adulthood, the power of greed and corruption, remembering and kind of respecting and celebrating the past while also embracing modernity. Definitely themes of capitalism are inside of here. And Miyazaki, I think, does such a great job of borrowing a lot from Japanese folklore and other folklore as well, while also sort of creating all of this. So this movie is populated with a lot of original creatures and spirits. As mentioned, the synopsis, there's a bathhouse that all these spirits go to. And Chihiro has a pretty dramatic time sort of accepting this new status quo for herself. And I think this is a pretty powerful inciting incident if we're thinking about the structure of this movie, of how her parents are at this theme park, and then there's all this mysterious food, and they just start chowing down on it without even really thinking about what it's from. The dad drives this really expensive Audi with all-wheel drive. And so they keep saying, oh, daughter, grab, eat all this food. They're like, no, like, this isn't ours. We shouldn't do it. And I think that idea of like her sense of judgment and her sense of right and wrong really propels her through the entire movie. And this film has some really great characters as well. Does anybody have any thoughts on sort of Chihiro/Sen and sort of her arc throughout the movie and sort of what she undergoes?
My only complaint about the movie is how much she was yelling. I was so annoyed. But that's such a minor part of the movie. But I think that her character, I guess we could spoil it, but the fact that her character was so full of love that she could break curses, and she really just had so much care and passion for literally everyone she met, even people who were treating her like absolute garbage. And I really loved that a lot.
Nice. Any other thoughts on Chihiro?
I was thinking about that too, Sam. Like, she definitely goes through like a change and kind of has to overcome some fear in order to rescue her parents and her friend and all of this stuff like throughout the course of the movie. But like, it didn't feel like that dramatic of like a character adjustment, because like she really is pretty consistent with like her sense of right and wrong, and I just kind of liked that consistency throughout the movie, and I felt like even when she was scared, she was still being very strong and like kind of trying her best in this very fucking strange world that she is in. Which, yeah, I just like watching her, like, I kind of at the beginning, I was like, God, she yells a lot. Like, she's very whiny. But then, like, as it progressed, I was like, no, this is like a very strong character that I appreciate a lot. And like, I wish that her parents went through like something, because they're kind of assholes the whole time and don't really get a character arc either.
Yeah, even at the end.
Even at the end, yeah. Like, they're still just like, oh, like, why are you taking so long? I'm like, fuck you people. Like, what is wrong with you guys? I mean, I would have eaten that food, but besides that, they were jerks. But yeah, I loved her. I thought she was wonderful.
I'm really glad you brought the parents, because that seemed to be, it was hard to find negative reviews for this movie. One that I found was a 1-star review saying it's not Chicken Little.
Which is not. That's fair. It's not.
It's fair. And so aside from those kind of joke negative reviews, ones I found did say, questions sort of, well, does Chihiro really undergo these any sort of changes? And what about the parents? Is there any responsibility for them? And I think sort of after the movie was over, kind of doing a little bit of research, I think it's really cool that this 10-year-old in a lot of ways kind of has it figured out. And so all of these challenges just get thrown her way, and she still kind of has that resolve. Say, I know kind of who I am, I know what I need to do, and it's really about her overcoming change in her life, not necessarily overcoming like a huge character default. And I think it's sort of interesting to throw a character like that into the sort of like hero's journey or the monomyth, which this film definitely takes a lot of inspiration from. And I think it also has a really interesting antagonist. I'm just in general bad with names, and I should have wrote down, does anybody remember the witch's name? Yubaba?
Yubaba?
Mm-hmm.
Yubaba. I think she was a really interesting antagonist. She is this giant witch with like a huge nose, giant wart in the middle of her forehead, who is in charge of this bathhouse. And she actually, it's revealed later in the film, has a twin sister. Zeniba, I believe is the name.
Yeah.
And so the film's also, I think, tackling this really interesting idea of like nature versus nurture, of sort of what happens when people are thrown into these very specific circumstances and how they're changed as their lives go on. Yeah, Tori.
I'm happy you brought them up too, because I thought it was interesting, like, when you're introduced to the first witch, who's the owner, like, she is kind of scary, and she's like presented as a bird the first time you see her, and she's like yelling at this girl and just like is very, very nasty. And then later on you meet her sister, who looks exactly the same as her, but is like very loving and kind and creates this like really nice environment. And I thought that was kind of cool, just because like my perspective of like the way that woman looks like changed with like the different personalities. Like, initially I found her to be very scary and like just like kind of ugly and mean, and later on, like, a different woman with the same features is like very warm and grandma like, and it was like kind of interesting just seeing that play out throughout the movie.
Yeah, Christine.
I think going off what Tori was saying, I think you see that sense of change in perception of character, like in other characters as well. You see that with the stinks, or what they think is the stink spirit, but Chihiro's intuition moves her to like help this character and spirit out by removing this plug that ends up, or thorn that ends up being an entire junkyard that this spirit has accumulated. And then you sort of realize that this character just was in need of help, a good bath, and so you see that kind of transformation, and then she's then rewarded for that intuition and that caring spirit. And you see that with No Face as well, that she also builds that relationship with a character that is from at first glance quite creepy and sort of insidious character that finds its way into the bathhouse, but then you really kind of I'll never understand No Face, but you get a little bit more perspective on that character.
Dave, I saw you had your hand up.
Yeah, as relates to Christina, what you're saying there about Chihiro, I mean, one of the things I find most interesting about this movie is that it portrays a 10-year-old girl who in the end seems, as you know, versus the parents, as we discussed, also seems to have things a little more figured out somehow than her parents even do. And I think that a lot of that's reflected through the way that she navigates this world, this really kind of confusing new space, through kindness. And that kind of being her guiding influence and intuition, and how that ultimately leads to, for successful results. And I just also really love a clumsy protagonist. I think that's always great because she's always stumbling and falling down. And I think that's always an adorable trait to have in your main character.
The stair scene when she slips
God.
on the stairs, and then the shot is of her with her arms back, just flying down these stairs, and then she lands right into the cement wall.
Yep.
I think this film, I'm so glad you brought up that scene, Christine, because I think it does a really good job of balancing tension and comedy inside of it. That scene that you're referring to, she is basically, if they discover she's a human, they're going to turn her into a pig or kill her or she's not going to be around much longer. And so Haku sort of befriends her, very cryptic character we'll talk about in a little bit, and then gives her advice, says, go to the boiler guy, he's going to help you, ask for a job, don't stop asking for a job. And so she's running down these stairs, and I had a flashback to a dream that I had years ago where I was in a Ferris wheel, but there was no like seatbelt harness thing. So I was just going on this fast Ferris wheel, spinning around and around, feeling like I was going to like fall off and die. And so it's just interesting. I don't know, I just had a visceral, I totally forgot about that dream until watching that scene where she breaks a step and she's trying to go stealthily, and then she just flies down the stairs. And the perspective that the stairs have, like the background, the foreground, I don't know, all of that was just stuck out in my mind like it doesn't in a lot of animated movies.
Yeah, one thing about that too, I think, is it's really accentuated by the animation. There's a lot of disparate paces of movement among characters and among sequences that I think really highlights an energy in the film, because there is a lot of stillness in the backgrounds that are beautifully rendered and everything, but there are these moments of like rushing energy that really kind of propel the narrative as well as like the visual medium itself. It's really not uncommon in Miyazaki films and really well executed here.
Lots of moments of silence that really kind of stood out to me. Lots of moments of where when she turns into Sen, and she's just like sitting, staring out into the sea, into the ocean, when she's on the train trying to go to Yubaba's sister, just lots of moments of contemplation. I thought that was kind of really powerful to put inside of a kid's movie, to sort of risk having moments of silence, which I know Miyazaki was like, that's really important. It just can't be wall-to-wall action. You have to have moments for contemplation. I think the character that I just have the most questions about is obviously No Face. You first meet No Face when Chihiro is, Haku is helping Chihiro get into the bathhouse and trying to protect her. And then you just see this, he sort of kind of looks like Ghostface from Scream. I kept wanting to call him Ghostface. Has a giant white, Japanese theatrical mask where all you see are just like black slits for eyes and I think is a frowny mouth. Just like this black kind of ethereal cloak. Just see it on the bridge, you see kind of a few times, and then through kindness, as once Chihiro gets a job at the bathhouse, lets No Face in. And I think that's a really great example of an environment changing somebody. Goes from this sort of meek figure to literally devouring people. Yeah, Christine.
Can we just acknowledge that the way that No Face communicates at first is
Oh, please, I hated it.
I
I hated
I can never get used to it.
it. Oh, no.
It's kind of like Connor. You're a Dragon Ball Z fan. It's kind of like anytime they're like angry and they're just like staring at someone. There's always like a weird cat noise.
Yeah.
I
Some kind
even
of, yeah,
prefer
funny.
something a little more forward. Sorry.
No, we're gonna,
That was an aside. Continue, Connor. I just wanted to provide that.
and I think this movie sort of kept me on my toes with not knowing what characters' motivations really are. There's really no obvious antagonists, and I feel like No Face is sort of set up to be this evil character, and definitely has sort of not great moments, but ultimately through Chihiro's kindness, sort of finds redemption. Any other thoughts on kind of No Face? Probably like the mascot for the movie.
Yeah, I think definitely. I knew nothing about the movie going in except for this character. Two reasons, both because of the internet. One, do you guys remember that? I don't even know if it's like a meme, but like the picture of the little girl at a birthday party. It was like, it's a costume party, and she dressed up as No Face, and everyone like she scared everyone else. So that, but then also turning the part where No Face is getting hit with the waves over and over again. I've seen that gif online where people put like feels and getting hit and hit and hit. And so like I genuinely had no idea what this was going to be about. I'm like, how does this character fit in here? What is this character about? And I still don't know, which I think is just kind of incredible, really.
Yeah, I think sort of taps well into Miyazaki giving us good amount of information, but we only really know as much as Chihiro knows. We really don't know too much about it's not Game of Thrones level of lore or, how the spirit realm works and all of this. We're basically just meeting all these different characters and spirits as they're sort of coming along. One of my favorite was the radish spirit.
Ugh.
Radish
It was
man.
nasty.
And just this movie is just brimming with creativity for all these creature designs and ideas. No Face, totally original character. Borrowing visually from Japanese theater, but in terms of like that kind of, I believe they're called like kami or yokai, like in terms of some kind of folkloric spirit, that's just a wholly new creation that Miyazaki came up with. And something that stood out to me when watching this movie is the importance of thresholds, bridges, doorways, windows, the surface of water kind of going in and out of spaces, just having a significant amount of power. I don't know if I have any really kind of more thoughts on that, or if you guys do, but just this idea of like space and this barrier and this threshold, that just sort of, I don't know, just resonated with me a lot as I was kind of watching the movie. And even the bridge that leads from the amusement park town to the bathhouse also reminded me a little bit of Coco, with the Bridge of the Dead going from the graveyard to the Coco, I forget what that town was called, the Land of the Dead. And so I don't know, that just kind of just reminded me of that aspect. Were there any sort of kind of themes or symbolism going on that sort of really stood out with you guys, or was kind of interesting, or something maybe that as a kid you really wouldn't have thought of too much?
Now you got me thinking about thresholds. I'm like,
Yeah.
processing that idea. I really, really like that idea. And I think you have people passing through changes in physical space, but I think that parallels how different characters interact with each other. Completely different characters and motivations kind of passing through one another. Not a complete thought. I'm going to keep thinking about that. That's a good.
Well, that sort of made me think of how different people interact in different rooms and around different people. Like Haku, who is Yababa's apprentice. It turns out that he's basically being sort of imprisoned by Yababa because he is actually a river deity, a river spirit. And so his river got dammed up, apartments got built on top of it, so he couldn't find his home. So he drifted to the bathhouse and got forced into indentured servitude, basically. And so even Chihiro, because he's very sweet and kind to Chihiro when they first meet, as she's trying to evade the authorities. But then when he's in the presence of Yababa, he's like a totally different character. And she's like, "Oh, are there two Haku?" She asks Lynn, who's sort of her friend and supervisor. And so yeah, even different rooms that people are in act differently. I didn't even really think of that part of it.
I
Well,
also
oh, sorry.
go ahead.
As the movie progresses, I feel like you notice that she does develop like a faith in him, and even when other people like with their perceptions are like, oh, he's like not good, or he's like this woman's henchman and all this stuff, like she is very faithful to the fact that like he is good, and like that ends up being what saves him towards the end of the movie. And then like at the end when he does recover his identity and you find out that he had saved her when she was younger, and she's just like, you are good, like it's seeing like a moment of like her faith actually paying off, which is pretty amazing.
And even there's a line, it's basically like, no one's ever really gone. It's kind of the idea of like, if somebody, people don't really leave your mind. I think it's Zaniba who tells her that. And so she just, I think that's what's so powerful, driving this gut instinct to trust Haku, who's basically just like a bureaucrat who does the bidding of the evil factory owner type of archetype. That's how other people see him, but yeah, not how Sen see him. Christine, were you going to add something too?
I was thinking again about No Face. You might have brought this up before, but he initially, or it is at the bridge, and then you slowly see this sort of transparent spirit enter the bathhouse when Chihiro leaves the door open. And then, Connor, you mentioned how characters transform depending on the environments that they're in. You see No Face start to eat all the food in sight and then start eating people and transforming into this giant monster that definitely connects to the environment of the bathhouse, in some ways being run on sort of the fuel of greed. And it's this character that I can't pinpoint No Face's like substance, but I guess that is kind of the idea, that sort of this transparent spirit then starts to accumulate the essence of the environment that it's in, and then it becomes a monster, and then Chihiro allows the character to then, or I guess shows it kindness, and then it transforms again. But that just got me thinking about characters that are changed depending on the spaces that they end up entering.
Well, there's that line too towards the end where she's just like, even though like he's like running after her to try to eat her or whatever, she's like, oh, like this is just a bad environment from him, he just needs to like get out of this space. Like she says that too, and you're like, man, like even the idea that you can see people are good in a different environment, and like recognizing that environmental factors like play a part in how people behave is very cool for this.
Totally.
And so mature.
Yeah, very.
Especially for, when this movie is designed for preteens.
Yeah.
That's sort of the guiding principle. I think that's pretty powerful to put inside of a movie. One thing I also loved about No Face was that he pushes the limits on how much vomit can be in a PG movie. Food is also, Sam, I'm glad you brought up Food and Family earlier, because I feel like this could also be a great contender for a Food and Family movie. Chihiro is searching for her family, and there's all this food, and her parent, the food plays a really important theme. And that's also across culture too, about like eating food, you become a part of the culture, the land, that's sort of a mythic theme in a lot of places. And so the, kind of going back to the muck monster, definitely I think one of the cool scenes in the movie, this ugly sort of I guess it looks like poop, probably basically a poop monster, wants to come to the bathhouse to get cleaned. They begrudgingly take the money. They can't turn customers away. Maybe even some ideas like guest right too in this movie too. And so as they clean it, she gets close to him, pulls out the plug, and this whole polluted river comes out of this creature, and it turns out to be a river spirit. And I even think just like visualizing and sort of, I guess, anamorphizing pollution, I thought was a really cool moment in the movie. And so the river spirit, once he's all clean, gives Chihiro, I guess it's kind of like a dirt ball that is food, but it's like medicine also. And so she gives out this gift from her kindness, and that kind of helps other people and resolve situations. So she gives a part of this like moldy medicine gushy ball to No Face, and No Face just vomits up everything. The people that he swallowed, the food, just like a huge purge, and that was pretty gruesome. Just vomit gets everywhere. And so I think a lot of comedy comes from that, of just, I wonder if that's a way that he thought maybe make kids laugh. I mean, I laughed at just tons and tons of vomit sort of going anywhere. I don't know if there's more to talk about the vomit, but do you guys have anything to add with the vomit?
No, I think you really covered it.
Yeah, I think we covered sort of a lot of the themes.
I did really like one of the notes that you provided for us here regarding regarding her needing to remember her actual name as opposed to the given name Sen. If you want to talk more about that, I thought that was really really interesting.
Sure. I think one of my sort of favorite, literature tropes, just kind of writing tropes, is the power that names have, the power that places have. And so Sen eventually, she tries to go to the Boilerman to get a job. Chihiro goes to the Boilerman to try to get a job. Then she goes up to Yubaba, the head evil witch. And the witch is under, I guess, some kind of spell, or, I forget the exact word for it. It's basically like a contract where if somebody asks for work, she can't turn them away. And so how she keeps people under contract is they write their name, sign it, and then she takes a few letters. It's a pretty cool scene where she like has her hand on top of the paper, lifts up a few letters, a few characters, and then all that's left is the phrase Sen. And that's her name. And she says, you can only go by this now. And so everybody who works there has this sort of fake name. And then they're under her power unless they can remember their real name. Also reminded me a lot of a cult. Like that's what cults do to get people, to keep people indoctrinated in the real world, is to give them new names. That way they kind of forget their previous identity. And Sen means 1,000 in English. And so I think that's sort of Miyazaki being like, that's just what Yubaba views her as, just a number. Not a person, but sort of just a number. And Haku, sort of his main arc is trying to remember his name. And so it turns out that Haku is a shortened name of the river that he was the spirit for. And so, Chihiro and Sen sort of help him remember that. I just think that's just such a cool kind of trope of like what, our names have power. How different would our lives be if our names sort of changed suddenly, or we wanted to change our name? I think that's just a pretty powerful idea and concept.
And just sort of speaking to also like a notion of being giving over your identity to the concept of like a workforce and everything. Sort of a notion of like what we surrender for monetary gain, and what we lose in individualism by embracing some more materialistic aspects of modernity as opposed to embracing a richer cultural heritage, especially rooted in names. So I think that really touches on that as well.
And I think that Chihiro, by being, accepting the name Sen, she's not doing it for monetary gain. She's doing it to save her family.
Right.
And I kind of wish we knew more about, we spend a lot of time with Lin, who's another sort of washer, pretends to not like her in front of other people. Nobody wants a stinky human to be hanging out with them, but she befriends her, actually really likes her. And so I wish we knew kind of what her deal was. Like, are all these other people spirits? What was Lin's motivation for coming here? It seems like it was just to make money, to have a place to live and to do work, but we don't really know a whole lot. So I'd be super interested in just learning a few more backstories for the characters that we get to meet.
Yeah, I'm glad you brought her up. She's a great character, and she in turn shows Chihiro kindness and is like a mentor for her, helps her navigate the craziness of suddenly working for this bathhouse. Yeah.
Cool. Any other sort of thoughts about what we were talking about with Spirited Away, the themes, sort of the characters?
Can we spend a second talking about the creatures? Because, my God, I was losing my mind. I really love anything that's tiny and weird. And so those soot sprites, whoo, they hit me right here. Every time they were on screen, I was yelling about them because they were so cute.
And they eat stars.
Yeah. And when they're grabbing them, tattoo that on my face, like I love
Yeah, and I think that and those creatures, I think, add to just like the magicalness of the world, of how the Boiler Man, his name escapes me. He's like the spider guy, kind of looks like Dr. Eggman from Sonic, Robotnik, who like has these long arms that can stretch and reach the different herbs for the water. He enchanted Soot to turn into little like spider things to carry the coal. And just like that little detail of creativity, I thought was like so cool. And the moment when one of them struggles to lift a coal, and then Chihiro helps them, then all the other ones are like, "Oh no, I don't want to work either. Help me!" I thought that was really cute. Yeah, Dave, you had your hand up.
Yeah, it just kind of reminds a lot for me. Also going back to Disney, strangely enough, it reminds me also a lot of like Alice in Wonderland. How many like just sentient small characters surround and populate this world, and how much like unique character design there is to the life just on the periphery of what's going on.
Along the same lines as Disney, I also thought a lot of Fantasia, like
Yeah.
building scenes, interesting characters, not like super driving plot in some moments, but just times for music and characters and setting to just sweep you away and like pull you into this cool universe. I was like, and especially with the Soot characters, that reminded me a lot of scenes in Fantasia.
It's a world that's just so rich too, and it's rendered backgrounds and everything. It's just like everything. I gasped so many times watching this movie, just at the beauty of backdrops and scenes. It's just a world that you would really, I don't know. I wouldn't have a problem with this movie like lasting forever, really.
I think his original plan was like a 3+ hour epic. That the studio sort of, all right, we gotta rein in, keep it at 2 hours ish. It also reminds me of the bathhouse a little bit of like Hogwarts, of where it changes constantly. Like it's sort of hard to get a sense of geography, not in a bad way, just like that. It's just kind of like a magical place. Sometimes the grassy fields are flooded with water because there's a rainstorm. So it's just sort of like, yeah, around every turn, you're sort of like, there's a new passageway, a new field, a new doorway, new elevator. I thought that was pretty cool.
Speaking of water, the rendering of the water and the train tracks and the fish moving below the surface is just stunning. So beautiful. And I think towards the end of the movie, once there's a lot of interior action within this sort of labyrinth of a environment, Hogwarts, bathhouse, crazy place, and then the sweeping seascape when she realizes she has to go to take the train to Zeniba's house. And then it just opens up with a huge sky, huge scape of water. It's so, so, so beautiful. And even when Haku is his dragon form, the forms and the movement he takes in the sky looks like he's swimming. And I feel like actually there's a lot of scenes where she's flying, or there's a scene at the end where she's flying with Haku and she gets flashbacks to the water, which is connection to when he saved her when she was young. And so it's kind of cool that like air and water seem to it moves quickly between the spaces of air and water really really quickly.
Very like elemental. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And then you have elements too of I was watching the English dub, and so whenever there's like signs, it seems like every sign outside the bathhouse said oil on it. And you have like electric lights signaling, daytime is over. So I think he's also working with these interesting ideas of, yes, these natural forces at play, sometimes, fighting against modernity and all these modern new technologies that we have.
Haku, in the English dub version, was voiced by the same person who voiced Binks from Hocus Pocus.
I recognize that voice.
Yeah, I was like, it sounds like Binks?
Zachary?
Also, the American actress who voiced Chihiro, Davy Chase, also voiced Lilo and Lilo and Stitch, and she was Samara in the Ring.
No way, that's crazy. She's got to stop yelling. That's it.
Cool. I just have a few other kind of fun facts here as feels like we're sort of wrapping up. The bouncing lamp that you find at Zeniba's house.
I love it.
Yeah, that apparently was a nod to the Pixar logo. with the lamp that kind of bounces around with the same sound effect. And we actually have John Lasseter to thank, who was the former head of Pixar, overall big old creep, because knows watched a lot of Miyazaki films and saw this when it came out in Japan, like got it over to the Pixar studios, and then basically worked with Disney to get this movie published and produced in the United States. And so he was in charge of the English dub that it sounds like all of us watched. So I thought that was an interesting note. And it is also the longest animated film that has been nominated in Oscar animation history, 125 minutes.
I'm so sorry to pause. Is there music playing right now? Okay, good. Okay, never mind. Keep going.
Yeah. Any other thoughts on Spirited Away or Miyazaki, Studio Ghibli? I definitely will watch more, probably this week. Unfortunately, it is not on American Netflix, but it is on international Netflix. It is also some websites as well where it can be found. I downloaded a free VPN, Windscape, not a sponsor. And so I was able to watch that just on international Netflix. And I had no idea how much stuff UK Netflix had that we don't have here. That's kind of cool. All right. Well, thanks for joining us for this chat about Spirited Away. Thanks for the awesome discussion. We're going to take a quick break, and then we will be back with our whiteboard question.
And by quick break, we mean not in Zoom.
Do we want to do the character quiz that I sent out?
Yeah, I took it.
Okay,
Yeah.
I'm so sorry for the interruption. There is music currently playing. It's like smooth jazz, and I cannot figure out where it's coming from.
That's fine. Did everybody get a chance to take the quiz?
I'm taking it right now.
Oh, it was on Spotify. Yep. Okay.
Smooth jazz was in your head?
Huh? It was not in my head, but it was very like doom, 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 doom.
Nice.
Yeah. Not that any of you needed to hear that.
And you guys all saw the whiteboard question?
So the character quiz was not the whiteboard question.
I thought we could do both.
Both. Got it. Okay.
This seemed like a good movie for a character quiz.
Oh, yeah.
Sam will still get the xenomorph.
Yeah, wait till you hear what I got.
I mean, we can go. I can just.
Oh, you're good. Oh, we're good. Are we good?
Yeah.
Okay, cool.
Sure.
And welcome back. We had an awesome discussion about Spirited Away. Now for the back half of this episode, we are actually going to start by talking about a character quiz that we took. There are quite a few Spirited Away character quizzes. BuzzFeed had the worst ones. The best one that I found was on quotev.com. And I thought this was asked some pretty interesting questions. So who wants to share first with what character they got from Spirited Away?
I mean, I got Zaniba, which made me very excited.
Nice.
I was very happy with that one. You are a very kind person, but you don't take crap from anyone if they mess with you. You just love messing with people who have wronged you by playing pranks on them. You also tend to love giving advice and hearing about people's love lives.
Does that hold up?
Sure.
Sam, how about you?
I got No Face.
Okay.
Yes.
I got it. I read it. I immediately disagreed and deleted it. So it basically said you're a really shy person, can open up every once in a while, and I was like, that's wrong. Bye.
Sam, you always get the best ones. Christine.
Yeah, I got Zaniba too.
Yay.
Playing pranks everywhere. Putting my people steal my seal and I put a curse on them.
Putting jazz music in the podcast.
Dum.
All of those?
How about you?
Well, surprise, surprise, I got Yubaba.
Mm.
the description, which I don't know that I necessarily agree with, but people are pretty intimidated by you until they really get to know you. You have an obsession with money, but are not good at letting it completely control you. You're also someone who doesn't like taking orders from others.
I say that all rings true, Dave.
Money, money, money.
Then to round it out, I got Chihiro.
Oh, wow.
Well, okay.
Fine, all right. I'm gonna be no face over here. God.
Friends. It says you have a very kind heart and you try your best to help anyone you can. You are also very strong-willed. Change is not something you're very fond of, but you're great at making friends.
Cute.
That feels pretty good. And then on to our whiteboard question. This question I propose for you guys is you are dead and you now have to go to the great bathhouse in the sky. What spirit would you be from Spirited Away, or just maybe spirits in general, and why?
I would be one of the ducks. I love the bathing ducks. They're so cute.
Me too. Me too.
Just like 8 of them just sitting in the bathtub. So cute.
And their eyes are so far apart, they seem like dazed and just like, well,
It's like,
it's great.
A little bit of like a Psyduck vibe from Pokemon.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
Tori and Dave, that was also your pick?
Yes.
Yep.
Sam, what was your pick?
I felt like I would be a river spirit, but I do, and I already said this. The soot sprites, they have my heart. And I was like, I wouldn't want to be one of them because I think their life is like terrible. But I would love to maybe be around them.
Be one for the day.
No.
I think I'd have to go with the radish spirit.
Yeah.
Be connected with this giant radish guy. Turnip, is he the turnip radish spirit?
Radish man.
Think of the radish, yeah.
Yeah.
I feel like I really connected with him. He unknowingly helped Chihiro, which is probably how I would function. And he just gave no fucks. He was like, oh, I'm going to walk over here. Oh, other elevator. Great. I'm going to just walk behind and do my own thing. Seemed like a pretty powerful spirit. So I don't know. I think I'd want to be that guy.
I like the concept of a radish spirit. Does that mean there's like a spirit for every type of food? Because I'm into it.
I think so. I know, like, in traditional, just from my very brief research, that in Japanese folklore, lots of things have spirits inside of them. Trees, plants, animals. So yeah, I think theoretically most things have spirits that can go chill in the bathhouse when they need a break from the earthly realm, whatever that means.
I feel like we know what it means.
Yeah.
Cool. Well, thank you so much, guys, for talking about Spirited Away and giving me the chance to finally watch this movie. If I watch more Miyazaki films, I'll definitely let everybody know. Anything we want to shout out during this quarantine time for our listeners to check out?
No.
Cinema 76. Every week we're doing streaming recommendations. We just did Romance, and I think Classics is coming up soon. So we'll have some more recommendations for stuff to watch while we're all housed in our respective spaces. And then I think the next of my Cronenberg series will be out when this comes out next week. So, yeah.
Right on. Well, be sure to follow us on all the social media platforms. If you're watching this on YouTube, let us know. We're publishing that, just seeing how that goes. Send us emails at butterwiththatpodcast@gmail.com, Twitter, butterwiththat1, Instagram, Facebook, all that good stuff. Well, thanks for stopping by. Please stay safe, stay quarantined. Really thinking of all of our listeners out there. Thank you so much for giving us your time during these difficult days. Have a great day, everyone.
Woo.
Bye.
Bye.
See ya.